616 pages just dropped, and buried inside them is the answer to the one question that has haunted XRP since the very beginning. Is it a security or a commodity? That single question dragged Ripple through years of court. It kept exchanges nervous. It kept institutions parked on the sidelines. And this week, the document that finally settles it landed on the Senate floor. Want to know how much that's worth? $63 billion got added to the crypto market this week on nothing but a rumor that a deal had been reached. Just a rumor. That's the size of what XRP is standing next to right now. And the moment that text dropped, the knives came out. For 2 years, the banks stayed quiet about this bill. This week, 6 banking trade groups moved as one, warning that this law is dangerous. Within hours, a U.S. senator took their entire argument apart with a single number. But here's what almost everyone is getting wrong. You keep hearing this needs 7 Democrats. That might not even be right. Because of 1 seat that changed and 2 Republicans who could vote no, the real number could be 10. And right now, the number of Democrats who've publicly said yes is 0. 616 pages, 14 days, 0 yes votes. And if this window closes, one senator warned we might be waiting until 2030. Let me show you exactly where XRP stands. Let's dig in. Real quick, from me to you. I'm not a financial advisor, and this isn't financial advice. And since this is a political story, I'm going to give you both sides fairly. No villains, no cheerleading, just what's actually in the document and what the honest odds are. Never risk what you can't afford to lose, and always do your own research. Cool? All right, let's get into it. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Crypto with BHW, where we tell it to you straight with heart. Grab your coffee, get comfy, because this is the closest XRP has ever been to real legal certainty in the United States, and I want you to understand every piece of it. Let's go. All right. Let's start with the document itself, because most people are reacting to headlines without knowing what's in it. On Wednesday, Senate Republicans released the updated text of the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act, formerly H.R. 3633, 616 pages. And here's a detail I found fascinating. Compared to the committee draft from back in May, only 2 things are genuinely new. New thing 1, the ethics rules. That's the provision that jammed this entire bill for months. And what it does is ban all federal officials, including the president and including their spouses, from issuing or sponsoring a digital asset for profit. Senator Cynthia Lummis called it the moment a president chose a higher ethical standard than the law required of him. New thing 2, a law enforcement section, investigative funding, plus powers to seize stablecoins used in crime. And everything else? The developer protections, the stablecoin yield compromise, the bankruptcy safeguards that protect customer assets if a platform collapses. All of that carried over unchanged. Which tells you something important. The crypto rules themselves were never really the fight. They've been settled for months. So now, why does this matter specifically for XRP? Here's the heart of it. For years, XRP has lived under one unanswered question: security or commodity? And that fog is exactly what kept exchanges cautious and institutions away. Now, earlier this year, the SEC and CFTC did issue joint interpretive guidance sorting digital assets into categories. Helpful, sure, but here's the catch that almost nobody talks about. Guidance can be rescinded overnight by any future administration. It's a sandcastle. A law is concrete. That's the difference. That's what these 616 pages actually offer XRP. Not a temporary opinion from a regulator, but a permanent answer written into federal law. That's why this bill matters more to XRP than to almost any other asset on the market. But the second that text hit the public, something happened that this bill hadn't seen in 2 years. An entire industry that had stayed silent suddenly moved, all at once, in coordination. Let me show you who and why. Okay, this is the part that genuinely surprised me. Within hours of the text dropping, 6 banking trade groups, led by the American Bankers Association, put out a joint statement. Their warning: the latest version of the Clarity Act still puts at risk the local lending that drives economic activity across America. Now let me translate that into plain English because it sounds abstract. Their argument is basically this: if people can park their money in crypto products and earn a yield, they'll pull deposits out of community banks, and banks lend against deposits. Fewer deposits, less lending, small businesses get squeezed. That's the case they're making. And honestly, as a concern on paper, it's not a crazy thing for a bank to worry about. But here's where it gets interesting. Because Senator Lummis responded, and she took the whole thing apart with one simple observation. Her point: we haven't seen any evidence of that happening. None. In fact, she pointed out that the banks that reported earnings recently, their deposits actually went up, not down. Up. Sit with that for a second. The core argument against this bill is deposits will flee. The actual data says deposits are growing, and she wasn't the only one making that point. This specific claim has been challenged repeatedly, with study after study failing to back it up. And you could hear the exhaustion in her voice, honestly. She said they've been working on this for 11 months, and for the last 6 of those 7 days a week. Her words were basically, at some point, we just have to vote. She even said the problem isn't the president anymore. The problem, she said, seems to lie inside the U.S. Senate itself, with the banks running a full-court press that's scaring some senators. So that's the picture. The industry that's had the loudest voice in Washington for a century just showed up at the last minute. Which tells you something, doesn't it? You don't fight this hard against something you think is irrelevant. The banks are fighting because they understand exactly what a legal framework for digital assets unlocks. And what it unlocks is the world XRP was built for. Now, the banks are loud but they don't actually get a vote. The people who do are a small handful of senators, and the math there is way messier than anyone is telling you. Let's fix that right now. All right, this is the part I really need you to understand, because if you get this, every headline for the next 2 weeks will make sense to you. The basic rule: to move past a filibuster in the Senate, you need 60 votes. Republicans don't have 60, so Democrats have to cross over. Simple enough. But how many? Here's where it gets complicated, and where most channels are just repeating a number without checking it. The commonly quoted figure is 7, but reporting has put the Republican count at either 52 or 53, following the death of Senator Lindsey Graham, so depending on which count you use, that's 7 or 8 Democrats needed, if every single Republican votes yes. And that's the assumption worth questioning, because Senators Josh Hawley and Rand Paul both opposed the stablecoin bill last year, and multiple analysts expect them to oppose this one too. If that happens, the number of Democrats needed climbs to as high as 10. Quick one before we go further. Did you know the ethics rule inside this bill actually expires in 2029? It's got a built-in sunset. Type yes or no in the comments. I really want to see who caught that. So, 7, 8, or 10. And here's the number that matters most today. The number of Senate Democrats who have publicly committed to voting yes right now, 0. Now before you panic, hold on, because context matters. 2 Democrats, Ruben Gallego and Angela Alsobrooks, already voted for this bill in committee back in May when it advanced 15-9. So the crossover isn't theoretical. It's happened before. And remember, when the House passed this exact bill a year ago, it wasn't close, 294 to 134, with dozens of Democrats voting yes. So the bipartisan coalition exists. It's been demonstrated. The question is whether it shows up again in the Senate in the next 14 days. And that brings us to the group everyone's calling obstructionists this week. But I actually read their full statement, and what they said is not what the headlines told you. Let me show you the difference. Okay, deep breath. This is where I want to be really careful and really fair, because this is the part getting distorted the hardest in both directions. On Wednesday, a group of 7 Senate Democrats put out a joint statement, and the headline everywhere was, "Democrats reject the bill." So let me read you what they actually said, because it's meaningfully different. They said the Republican proposed text, as it currently stands, falls short. They listed where: ethics for elected officials, consumer protection, illicit finance, conflicts of interest, market integrity. Fair enough, that's a real critique. But then came the line almost nobody quoted. They said, "We have been working in good faith with our Republican colleagues for the past year and will continue doing so to get this over the finish line." Over the finish line. Those are their words. That is not the language of people killing a bill. That's the language of people negotiating one. They didn't walk away, they stopped short of rejecting it outright. And their specific technical objection is actually pretty concrete. They don't like that the ethics provisions enforcement is tied to the Department of Justice, because in their view, that recreates the very conflict of interest the provision is supposed to solve. They want stronger limits on senior officials' digital asset investments. Whether you agree or not, that's a fixable, specific ask, not a philosophical rejection of crypto. Now, is everyone on that side negotiating? No. Senator Elizabeth Warren, the ranking Democrat on the Banking Committee and the most prominent crypto skeptic in Congress, was blunt. She said this bill should be dead on arrival. She's a real force, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But there's a genuine difference between dead on arrival and let's get this over the finish line. And that gap is where this bill either lives or dies. Meanwhile, On the other side, Brian Armstrong has been in Washington making the case that the status quo serves nobody, that with no federal law at all, you get collapses like FTX and customers get hurt. Over 800,000 people have messaged their representatives through Stand with Crypto, and Majority Leader John Thune has signaled he intends to move forward in the coming days regardless, which means forcing every senator, both parties, to go on the record. Publicly, yes or no. That's a bold move, and it's the kind of pressure that has flipped votes before. So let's bring it all the way home. Honest odds, real signals, and the thing that actually matters most for you as an XRP holder. Here we go. All right, let me give it to you straight, the way I'd tell a friend across the table. Start with the honest odds because you won't get them anywhere else. The prediction markets have been on a roller coaster. They bottomed near 24% about a week ago, climbed to the mid-40s when the deal news hit, and then slid back to roughly 38% after the Democrat statement. So the truth is, this is genuinely uncertain, and anyone giving you a guarantee in either direction is guessing. And one more thing people forget, even if the Senate passes it, the House still has to agree on the final text. But now let me tell you why I'm still genuinely optimistic, and I mean that. Look at what actually happened this week. The text got released after years of waiting. The ethics fight, the thing that blocked everything for months, has a written compromise on paper for the first time. The majority leader is willing to call a vote even without the votes locked, and the Democrats blocking it are still saying finish line, not never. Compare that to where we were even a month ago, and it's a completely different world. And here's the XRP specific piece I want you to hold on to. Whether this passes in 14 days or 14 months, the direction is now set, because the fight isn't over whether crypto gets rules anymore. That argument is over. Everyone's agreed on that. The fight is over ethics, language, and enforcement details. And once those rules exist, the single biggest weight on XRP, the security versus commodity fog, lifts permanently, not through guidance that a future administration can delete overnight, through law. That's the prize. That's what's sitting in those 616 pages. So what do you actually watch over the next 2 weeks? 3 things, and only 3. 1. Does Thune actually schedule the floor vote? That's the real green light, and it could come as soon as next week. 2. Does any Democrat break ranks and publicly say yes? Because the first one is always the hardest, and after that, they come in groups. And 3. Does the DOJ enforcement language get revised, since that's the specific thing they asked for? Everything else, the screaming thumbnails, the fake tweets, the "it's over" videos, is noise. Ignore it. And here's how I'd hold this emotionally, because that matters more than people admit. Be hopeful. We have genuinely never been closer than this. But don't hang your peace of mind on a 2-week window. If it passes, incredible, the fog lifts and everything downstream gets easier. If it slips past August 7th, it gets harder. Lummis has warned the industry might be waiting years, but it doesn't erase what's already been built. Japan already legitimized crypto. Europe has MICA. Ripple's infrastructure kept growing through all of it. XRP's story was never one vote. Zoom out one last time with me. A couple of years ago, XRP was fighting for its survival in a courtroom, and people genuinely wondered if it would make it. Today, there are 616 pages sitting on the United States Senate floor, written to give it legal certainty, and the majority leader wants to call the vote. That arc only points one direction over the long run. We're close. Closer than we've ever been. The pain doesn't last forever. It never does. So here's where I'll leave you, fam. 616 pages, 14 days, 0 yes votes, for now, and a community that reads the actual text instead of the panic headlines. Whatever happens next, green light or a longer road, we walk through it together. Clear eyes, steady hands, because that's what we do here. If this made the whole picture click for you, do me a favor. Drop your honest take below. Do they get it done before August 7th? I read every single comment. This has been Crypto with BHW, where we tell it straight with heart. Stay ready, stay hopeful, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.